She walked into a boardroom worth $5 billion and walked out with nothing. Zero. By choice. And the man she did it for? A Korean mafia boss who'd never asked her for anything. Now he's about to discover what she gave up, and when he does, everything changes. Imani Cross wasn't born into wealth. She coded her first app in a Brooklyn apartment with a broken laptop and a dream bigger than her circumstances. 10 years later, Cross Tech dominated the global AI market. She was untouchable. Forbes cover. Times Person of the Year. The world called her a genius. Park Jun-suk? He was the opposite of untouchable. Seoul's underground feared him. The man who controlled everything from the shadows. Cold. Calculated. Dangerous. They called him the Silent King because his enemies never heard him coming. They just disappeared. These two had no business knowing each other. But 5 years ago, on a rainy Seoul night when Imani was nobody, Jun-suk saved her life. She never forgot. And when his enemies came for him with a plan so deadly even his empire couldn't stop it, Imani made a choice that would shock the world. Before we dive into how a billionaire CEO and a mafia boss became each other's weakness, do me a favor, smash that like button if you're already hooked. And subscribe, because this story, it's going to take you places you've never been. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Alright, now let's jump back in. Because what Imani was about to discover would change everything she thought she knew about power, loyalty, and sacrifice. The city outside her penthouse never slept, but inside, Imani Cross felt the weight of silence pressing against her chest. The image of Jun-suk, pale and motionless, lingered on her phone like a brand. 72 hours. The countdown mocked her. She had never faced a problem she couldn't solve, but this was different. This was a man's life. A debt older than any contract, heavier than any boardroom decision. She tapped into every cross-tech resource at her disposal. Analysts, lawyers, intelligence channels. Every department pulled together, running scenarios, tracing networks, cross-referencing corrupt officials with international financiers, mapping out the conspiracy that threatened him. It was meticulous, sprawling, impossible. Even her most aggressive simulations couldn't predict all the moving parts. The trap was an intricate dance of power, fear, and lethal precision. And the cost was simple, brutal. $3 billion in liquid assets, international leverage, and legitimate business control. Her fingers hovered over the secure messaging app as she considered her options. She could ignore it, focus on her empire, and protect her identity, her power, her life. That was the safe path, the path every logic-driven cell in her body screamed she should take. But the memory of a rain-soaked Seoul night, of a man who saved her when she had nothing, when she was nobody, made the choice inevitable. She couldn't walk away. Not this time. The only solution moved faster than any human heartbeat. Marcus Chun. A man waiting for her misstep. A man who would pay $5 billion cash, unconditionally, immediately. The sale would be lightning fast, brutal in its finality. Every contract, every employee, every piece of her identity, gone in 48 hours. And yet, she knew that without it, he would die. Without it, she would fail the one person who had once seen her worth when the world hadn't. Her hand trembled as she dialed Marcus. "You still want cross-tech?" she asked, her voice steady, belying the storm beneath. The line went silent for a heartbeat, then a calm acknowledgement. He did. She confirmed terms, signed protocols, wired access. It was happening. Overnight, her empire would dissolve like sand through a clenched fist. Imani watched as the clock ticked down the hours, each second a reminder of what she was sacrificing. Every move she orchestrated was precise. Assets liquidated, safe houses secured, legal leverage applied, enemies manipulated. Everything she had built, everything she had protected, was being handed away. Her life, her achievement, her proof that she mattered, evaporating in service of a debt that had no ledger. 48 hours. That was all it would take. 48 hours, and Cross-Tech would belong to someone else. 48 hours, and she would have nothing. But Park Jun-suk would still be alive. She leaned back, eyes on the city lights, and exhaled. One decision. One night. One empire gone. and one life saved. The news broke before the sun had fully risen, reverberating through financial districts, tech blogs, and every headline that mattered. Imani Cross sells cross-tech in 48 hours. Why would she destroy everything? The question pulsed across screens worldwide, accompanied by stock tickers plunging and analysts scrambling to interpret a move that no one had anticipated. Investors were stunned, the boardroom in chaos, and the world watching as the woman who had built an empire from a Brooklyn apartment appeared to erase it in a single decision. Inside the Crosstech headquarters, the tension was palpable. Her CFO, Marcus Lee, stood rigid, fists clenched. Imani, stop this. You can't just sell the company. Think about what this does to everyone here, to your legacy. His voice cracked under the weight of panic and disbelief. The board members echoed his outrage, papers rustling, calls being made, arguments breaking out like storms in a glass house. Imani moved among them with a calm that felt almost unnatural, signatures flowing across documents like a stream cutting through rock. She offered no explanations, no appeals, no hesitation. Each mark she made on the papers, each confirmation she authorized, chipped away at the empire she had spent a decade constructing. She had known the cost, had anticipated the pain, and yet the image of Jun Suk, wounded and counting down toward death, was the only thing that mattered. Behind the scenes, her movements were surgical. The $5 billion from the sale flowed into strategic channels, offshore accounts, secure transfers, and emergency resources that only a woman of her reach could command. Officials were bribed to ensure safe passage for Jun Suk. Protective layers were laid over every movement he would make in the coming days. Every lever, every connection, every ounce of power that had once been hers was now repurposed toward a singular goal, dismantling the conspiracy that threatened him. Hours passed like a fevered blur. Contracts executed, press releases drafted and sent, emails confirming the transfer of assets. Her life as the CEO was evaporating before her eyes. The media speculated endlessly. Had she lost her mind? Was this some strategic ploy? None of it mattered. The risk, the scrutiny, the whispers, they were irrelevant. Only the endgame mattered. Finally, the last document lay before her. She took a deep breath, steadying herself as she signed her name one final time. The weight lifted, replaced instantly by a void she had never known. It was done. Crosstech was no longer hers. She was nobody again. And Jun Suk was alive. Can you imagine signing away everything you built? Your entire identity, gone in 48 hours? Drop a comment below. Would you sacrifice your dreams for someone who saved you once? Let's talk about it. And if you're feeling this story, hit that share button. Your friends need to see this. Now, back to the story. Because while Imani was losing everything, Jun Suk was about to wake up and discover exactly what she'd done. Jun Suk's eyes fluttered open to a stark, white ceiling, the hum of medical machinery filling the silence around him. His body felt like lead, each limb resisting the effort to move, and his mind was a haze of fragmented memories, flashes of darkness, pain, and a shadowed figure whispering threats he couldn't fully grasp. He tried to sit, but a nurse's gentle hand restrained him. "Easy. Take it slow," she murmured, disappearing before he could speak. Moments later, the door opened again, this time revealing Min Jun, his second in command. The man's expression was tense, yet controlled, his eyes betraying a mixture of relief and fear. "Jun Suk," he said quietly, stepping forward. "You're awake. You've been out for 3 days." Jun Suk's throat felt raw as he rasped. What happened?" Min Jun's voice tightened. "You were set up. The entire operation was a trap. They knew your every move. They were waiting to eliminate you. You were lucky to survive." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. It was close. Too close. Jun Suk's mind sharpened with disbelief. He had always been the one who protected, the one orchestrating every escape, every maneuver. To be caught, helpless, was a violation he could not accept. "And my people?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "They've secured the area, but there's more." Min Jun hesitated, as if bracing for the impact of his next words. Imani Cross, she sold her entire company. All of it. The billions she made, she used it to save you. To dismantle the conspiracy against you. Jun-suk froze, the words echoing in his head. A billionaire CEO, one of the most formidable women in the world, had surrendered everything. Her empire, her power, her identity, because of him. Shock rendered him silent, his mind cycling through disbelief, gratitude, and then something darker, fury. Not at her, but at himself. He had always been the protector, the one who carried the weight of danger for others. To be saved by someone else? To be indebted to her in this way? It was unbearable. His fists clenched as a storm of emotion coursed through him. I don't need protecting, he muttered, more to himself than to Min-jun. Especially, not from her. Min-jun watched quietly, knowing better than to interrupt the torrent of feelings surging through the man who had never allowed vulnerability. Jun-suk's gaze shifted toward the window. The city sprawled beneath him, buzzing unknowingly with its usual chaos. But he wasn't thinking about the skyline or the life he had before. He was thinking of Imani, her sacrifice, her unwavering resolve, and the world she had given up so that he could live. A cold determination settled over him, sharper than any blade. I need to see her, he said finally, his voice low, edged with an intensity that left no room for argument. Now, he rose slightly, ignoring the ache in his limbs, his resolve crystallizing. The silent king was awake, and nothing, not even his own pride, would stop him from finding the woman who had rewritten the rules of his world. The doors slid open with a quiet hiss, and Imani stepped into the pristine room, her heels echoing softly against the polished floor. The years seemed to collapse in that instant. 5 long years of absence that had carved hollow spaces in both their lives. Jun-suk sat propped against crisp white sheets, pale but unmistakably him, his dark eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her pulse catch. The air between them was electric, heavy with unspoken words, memories, and the tension of a history neither had fully acknowledged. Time had not dulled the gravity of their connection. If anything, it had amplified it, threading their gazes with something unspoken yet undeniable. Why? His voice was low, controlled, but it carried an edge that made her stomach tighten. Why did you give up everything? Why cross-tech? Why now? Imani drew a slow breath, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She stepped closer, careful not to cross the line of vulnerability and power that had defined their past interactions. 5 years ago, she began, her voice steady despite the emotions threatening to fracture it. I was in Seoul, pitching a startup. Broke, desperate, trying to make something of myself in a city that didn't care. And I got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. A local gang targeted me. I witnessed something I shouldn't have. She paused, letting her words settle, letting him see the truth behind her calm exterior. You saved me, she continued, eyes meeting his with raw honesty. You appeared out of nowhere and stopped them. You didn't ask for anything. Not my gratitude, not my name, not even a hint of who you were. You just protected me. Jun-suk's jaw tightened, a mixture of disbelief and old pride flickering across his face. I never told you. I know, she interrupted softly, a small, almost sad smile tugging at her lips. You saw me as a person worth saving when I was nobody. And when I found out someone wanted you dead, I didn't hesitate. I just moved. Because some debts, Jun-suk, can't be repaid with money. For a long moment, he said nothing. The storm of shock, disbelief, and admiration roared silently behind his eyes. No one had ever made that kind of sacrifice for him, not in his world of power, violence, and control. The realization struck him harder than any bullet or threat ever could. Someone had willingly relinquished everything she had built just to keep him alive. He opened his mouth, searching for words, any words, but found only silence. The enormity of her actions, the depth of her courage and selflessness, left him temporarily speechless. His pride warred with something unfamiliar in his chest, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to experience in years. The room was quiet, save for the faint beep of monitors, and in that silence, The unspoken truth hung between them. Imani had crossed oceans of power, wealth, and pride to save him. And for the first time in a long time, Jun-suk realized that someone, somewhere, had truly seen him, not as a king, not as a protector, but as a man worth saving. Jun-suk sat in the quiet of his private room, the weight of what Imani had done pressing on him like nothing in his life ever had. He had faced bullets, betrayals, and enemies who would have gladly seen him dead, but this act of selflessness, shattered the walls he had built around himself. Every instinct screamed that he should remain untouchable, that he should continue to be the one who protected, the one who calculated, the one who commanded. And yet, here was a woman he barely understood fully, who had given everything she had to keep him alive. He clenched his fists, his mind racing through every memory, every unspoken word, every brush with her courage and clarity over the years. "You gave me everything," he muttered to himself, a low growl of realization. "Now I give you everything I have." By the time he summoned Min-jun, the plan was already forming. He would offer her the full breadth of his empire, his organization, his resources, his network across continents. He would rebuild her legacy, make her richer than she had ever been, grant her a power that no one could match. It was everything he knew how to give, and he would give it freely, no strings, no conditions. When she met his eyes, however, Imani stopped him before the words could leave his mouth. Her calm, unwavering gaze met his, and the words that followed stunned him to his core. "I don't want your money," she said simply. "I don't want power." He froze, the offer dying on his lips, and for the first time in years, he felt completely off balance. "What then?" he asked, his voice rough with confusion and awe. "For the first time, I'm free," she explained. "Free from the need to prove myself, free from the weight of empires and boardrooms and expectations. What I want is to know if the man who saved me, the man who didn't ask for anything, is still in there, under all that armor. Because if he is, that's worth more than any empire in the world." Jun-suk's breath caught. Her request wasn't for power, it wasn't for money. She was asking for vulnerability, trust, a piece of him he didn't know how to give. A part of him had been trained to never give that away, to never let anyone in. And yet, the truth in her eyes, the unwavering certainty of her choice, stirred something dormant inside him. He shook his head slowly, fighting against the fear that had held him prisoner for so long. I don't know if I'm capable of being that man anymore," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper, carrying the weight of every scar and decision he had made. Imani stepped closer, her hand brushing against his arm with quiet conviction. "Then let's find out together," she said. "This is where it gets deep. She doesn't want his money. She wants his heart. If that hit you emotionally, I need you to hit that like button right now. And listen, subscribe and turn on notifications, because stories like this, they're rare. And we're just getting to the best part. All right, let's get back." Because what Imani didn't know was that her sacrifice had also put a target on her back, and Jun-suk was about to face the biggest decision of his life. Weeks passed in a delicate rhythm, the quiet punctuated only by the soft routines of recovery and the hum of the medical facility. Imani stayed close to Jun-suk, her presence a steady anchor as he regained strength, each day stripping away the layers of isolation he had wrapped around himself. Conversations started slowly, tentative and cautious, but soon they began to breach walls neither knew existed. She spoke of her childhood in the deep South, of cramped apartments and empty cupboards, of the hunger that had carved her ambition into something relentless. She told him of the nights she dreamed not of luxury but of freedom, from fear, from dependence, from the suffocating weight of being powerless. His eyes softened as he listened, and for the first time, she felt the burden of her history being understood, not judged. In turn, he revealed fragments of his past, the cold corridors of Seoul's underworld where he had earned the moniker the Silent King, the choices that forced his empathy into a distant memory, and the ruthless logic that had kept him alive but lonely. She didn't flinch at the darkness, didn't recoil at the admissions that would have frozen anyone else. Instead, she asked questions, curious, careful, human. Cultural exchanges became their bridge. Imani introduced him to the flavors and music of her southern roots, teaching him how a sweet tea should be poured and why her grandmother swore by the slow stir of molasses and biscuits. He shared rituals from his own heritage, the quiet reverence of ancestral rites, and the discipline that governed his empire. Laughter began to punctuate the silence, small but steady, as they learned not only about each other's worlds, but about the spaces in which they could exist together. Romantic tension simmered beneath every shared glance, every brush of a hand when reaching for tea, every moment that lingered just a second too long. Hope flickered in Jun-suk's chest, a dangerous, intoxicating hope, that maybe he could be more than the man the world demanded him to be, at least with her. One afternoon, he led her back to the narrow alley where 5 years ago he had saved her from certain death. The air smelled of rain and asphalt, the memory heavy in the silence between them. He leaned close, the ghost of their near-fatal encounter mingling with the present, and for a heartbeat, they nearly kissed. But instinct, fear, and the unspoken rules of his world pulled him back. "Stop protecting me from yourself," Imani whispered, frustration threading through her words. "I'm not afraid of who you are." That night, as the facility lay in calm darkness, a shadow moved beyond the perimeter, unnoticed by most but detected by the subtle hum of security monitors. Someone had been watching them, tracing their routines, noting vulnerabilities. The illusion of peace shattered in an instant. The conspiracy wasn't over. One enemy remained, and they had just found Imani. The message arrived like a blade through the calm night. "You destroyed everything I built, so I'll take everything you care about." Jun-suk's phone vibrated relentlessly in his hand, the red digits of the text illuminating his clenched jaw. He didn't need to read it twice to know exactly who had taken Imani. The last conspirator, the one enemy who had eluded every move, every counterstrike, had struck. Min-jun and the others were frantic. "You can't go," they urged, voices tight with fear. "It's a trap, a suicide mission. Don't do this alone." Jun-suk's dark eyes glinted with something that had no room for hesitation. "I won't let her die because of me. Not after what she gave up. Not after what she's done for me." The ride was silent, the city lights blurring past, every muscle in his body coiled with anticipation. When he arrived, the location was desolate, shadows crawling over the walls like predators. The air smelled of oil and cold metal. Jun-suk's hand never strayed far from the hidden weapons tucked beneath his coat, but he kept moving forward, calm, relentless, single-minded. The assault began like a storm. Enemies emerged from every corner, a wave of violence that would have broken any ordinary man. But Jun-suk moved like a force of nature, fists and feet a blur, every strike precise and brutal. Blood streaked his sleeve, a gash along his brow stung, but he didn't falter. There was a fire inside him now, something deeper than vengeance, something born of gratitude, loyalty, and love. Through the chaos, he found her. Imani was bound, bruised, yet her gaze met his with defiance, refusing to yield, refusing to betray fear. His heart surged, and he shoved past the last wave of attackers to reach her side. As they closed in again, he positioned himself between her and the threat, his body a shield, ready to die for her without hesitation. "You wanted to know if that man from 5 years ago is still in me?" His voice was low, fierce, trembling with emotion. "He is. He's only ever existed for you. And if losing everything is what it takes to keep you alive, then I'll lose it all. Because without you, none of this means anything." The sound of reinforcements came then, Min-jun and the others bursting into the fray, tipping the scales. The remaining enemies were neutralized, and at last, silence fell. Blood and sweat mingled with relief as Jun-suk and Imani clung to each other, shaken, battered, but alive. Jun-suk's voice was barely a whisper, raw and unguarded. "I'm yours. Whatever that means, however that looks, I'm yours. Without you, none of this means anything." If that line gave you chills, drop a comment with a red heart. And if you're invested in seeing how this ends, you better be subscribed. Hit that button. We're racing toward the finale, and you don't want to miss a single second. Let's finish this story, because what comes next is the transformation you've been waiting for. The weeks that followed were quiet in a way that neither Imani nor Jun-suk had ever experienced. Their bodies bore the bruises of their recent battle, but it was the emotional healing that was more profound, more deliberate. Every morning, Jun-suk walked her through exercises to regain strength, and every evening, they spoke about the life that had been stripped away and what they wanted to build now. The world outside had changed them, and they were no longer bound by the identities they had carried before. Without a company to lead, Imani felt a strange emptiness at first, but alongside Jun-suk, she began to see opportunity. His organization, once a force feared across continents, was now fragmented, its influence diminished. Yet instead of despair, there was a shared determination to redefine what power meant. Jun-suk began using his connections to steer his empire toward legitimate ventures, negotiating partnerships in industries long untouched by criminal enterprise. Some resisted the change, skeptical and stubborn, but Imani became his navigator, guiding him with her insight into the corporate and tech world, showing him that influence could be wielded without fear or force. Meanwhile, Imani channeled her expertise and Jun-suk's resources into a nonprofit dedicated to helping young entrepreneurs from marginalized communities. She poured her passion into mentoring, teaching them that creativity and determination could overcome even the harshest beginnings. They were both learning that they could leave behind the shadows of their past and create something that mattered on their own terms. Their first public appearance together was electric. Cameras flashed as they walked side by side, a formidable pairing that sparked headlines and endless speculation. Former billionaire CEO and Korean business mogul, an unlikely partnership. Critics whispered and pundits debated, but they paid no mind. Their focus was on the life they were building, not the image the world demanded of them. The blending of their worlds became a daily adventure. Imani practiced her Korean with patient, stifled laughter, while Jun-suk visited Brooklyn to meet her family, absorbing her southern roots with curiosity and quiet charm. Her grandmother, always skeptical, finally offered approval. That man looks at you like you're his entire world. Days were filled with ordinary magic. Jun-suk cooking simple meals while Imani critiqued with a teasing smile, her teaching him the basics of coding, and their playful arguments dissolving into laughter. Nights were spent in quiet conversation, sharing dreams, fears, and the small victories of learning each other outside chaos. Every touch, glance, and smile stitched them closer, intimacy growing naturally, unforced, without the weight of danger or obligation. They were building something new, not just a partnership, but a life where trust, love, and respect formed the foundation. Every choice they made was a deliberate step toward each other, toward the future they had chosen together, away from the shadows that had once defined them. It was in these quiet, ordinary moments that they discovered a power greater than any empire. The courage to be vulnerable and the freedom to be themselves, together. 6 months had passed, and life had settled into a rhythm that neither Imani nor Jun-suk could have imagined during those chaotic first days of reunion. The nonprofit was thriving, 5 young companies already funded and 50 more in the pipeline, each one a seed of possibility planted in communities that had been overlooked for far too long. Jun-suk's legal businesses were growing steadily, his reputation in legitimate circles cementing as he navigated deals and partnerships with a discipline that commanded respect without intimidation. But beyond the success, beyond the numbers, they had found something far more valuable. Happiness, quiet and deep, rooted in the life they were building together. One rainy evening, they returned to the spot in Seoul where Jun-suk had saved her 5 years ago. The familiar scent of wet stone and the soft patter of rain brought back memories so vivid it was almost unbearable. He turned to her, eyes dark and thoughtful. "Do you ever regret it? Giving up cross-tech?" Imani smiled softly, her hands finding his in the rain. "Every empire I build from now on, I build with you. That's not a loss. That's everything." Jun-suk reached into his pocket and produced a small key. It's a tech incubator. In Brooklyn and Seoul. Your dream and mine, together. The weight of it settled between them. A bridge between their past and the future they were forging. It was more than a building. It was a chance to rebuild, to do better, to give purpose to the pain and sacrifices that had brought them here. Tears welled in Imani's eyes. You gave me everything by showing me I didn't need everything. Just you. You saved me twice, he murmured, brushing rain-soaked strands from her face. Once when you sold your company. But really, you saved me the moment you showed me I was worth saving. That I could be more than what I was. The rain fell harder, washing over them, yet it felt warm, intimate. Their lips met, tentative at first, then with the certainty of two people who had faced chaos and death, loss and fear, and emerged whole together. It was not rescue anymore. It was love, full and fearless, mirrored in the rain that had witnessed their first night together. They pulled back, foreheads touching, breathing in unison. Around them, the city thrummed with life, indifferent yet welcoming. They had learned the hard truth about power. It was never about control, wealth, fear, or respect. True power was in the sacrifices one was willing to make, the person one was willing to become for those who mattered. Imani had given up an empire. Jun-suk had shed the armor that had defined him for decades. Together, they had built something far greater, a life, a love, a partnership that defied rules and expectations, proving that losing everything could sometimes lead to finding exactly what you were meant to have. 1 year later, they stood together, hands intertwined, cutting the ribbon at the grand opening of the incubator. Young entrepreneurs buzzed around them, full of hope and ambition. Imani no longer the isolated billionaire, Jun-suk no longer the cold kingpin. They had both been transformed, their true selves revealed in the act of surrendering what they once thought indispensable. They had found each other, and in doing so, had discovered the truest kind of power. And that is how a billionaire and a mafia boss found something worth more than empires, each other. If this story moved you, made you believe in sacrifice and redemption and love that breaks all the rules, I need you to do 3 things right now. 1. Smash that like button like your life depends on it. 2. Share this video with someone who needs to hear a story about real love. And 3. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're bringing you more stories that will make you feel something. Stories that remind you what it means to be human. Don't just watch, be part of this community. Drop a comment telling me what you thought. Did Imani make the right choice? Could you love someone from a completely different world? I want to hear from you. We're building something special here, and I want you to be part of it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for feeling. And remember, true power isn't what you have. It's what you're willing to give up for the people who matter. Until next time, stay powerful, stay passionate, and keep believing in love that changes everything.